Spring of 1983 in Chukotka always arrives late. Snow still lies in deep layers, but during the day it already begins to thaw, exposing the gray, frozen ground beneath. The wind from the Arctic Ocean cuts into the face like a knife. Two reindeer herders from the tundra, the State Farm Brigade, were riding on sledges along an old winter trail toward a camp. Suddenly the dogs stopped, began to howl, and refused to go any farther. One of the herders, an old man named Eddick, climbed down from the sledge and walked ahead. In a small hollow where the wind had piled up snow, something dark was visible. He cleared it away with a shovel and froze. A human hand was sticking out of the snow, gnawed, with fingers chopped off, but unmistakably human. Nearby lay scraps of a quilted jacket typical of visiting geologists, and a piece of belt with a buckle. The bones had been cleanly severed at the joints, as if someone had been butchering a reindeer carcass. Eddick called his partner. They examined the spot. There were almost no wolf tracks, although the bones had clearly been gnawed. But the strangest thing was that the chopped edges of the bones were fresh, made by an axe or a heavy knife. And this was not the first case. Over the past few years several people had gone missing in the area, and everyone thought the same thing: wandered drunk into the tundra, froze to death. Wolves finished the rest. But here everything looked different. They wrapped the find in a tarpaulin and took it to the settlement. The local police officer immediately contacted Anadir by radio. 3 days later, a M8 helicopter arrived with an investigative team. A real case had begun, and it had all started 5 years earlier, in the terrible winter of 19,771,978, when freezing rain destroyed tens of thousands of reindeer across Chukotka. In the small settlement of Tundra, a few wooden barracks, a club, a boarding school, the State Farm canteen, and a dozen yarangas on the outskirts lived a woman named Rultana. She was 41 years old, a Chukchi woman from an old reindeer herding clan. But for the past 20 years she had worked as a cook in the canteen. Short, sturdy, with a broad face and narrow eyes, always wearing a headscarf and an old sheepskin coat. The men in the settlement respected her. Rultana cooked better than anyone else rich reindeer meat soups when meat was delivered, or simple soups from canned goods and grains when there were shortages. Her husband, Tigrinto, died that winter together with their son. The brigade had gone out into the tundra and was caught in freezing rain. The reindeer could not break through the ice crust with their host to reach the lichen, and collapsed from hunger. The people tried to slaughter them for meat, but they themselves grew weak. Tigrinto and his 15-year-old son never returned from the route. They were found in spring frozen in a yaranga they had crawled into with their last strength. Rultana was left alone in her barrack at the edge of the settlement. At first she simply fell silent. She went to work, cooked, handed out portions to reindeer herders and visiting workers. But something inside her had broken. The hunger of that winter had eaten into her memory. She had seen how reindeer carcasses rotted uselessly, how meat went to waste, and she began to think, good should not be wasted. Meat is meat. In the summer of 1978, a geological survey team arrived in the settlement. Young guys from Leningrad and Moscow, living in barracks, drinking vodka from care packages in the evenings. One of them, Sergei, a tall red-haired man, often came into the canteen after his shift. Rultana gave him an extra portion. "You're skinny. Eat," she said. He joked, calling her Auntie Rula. One August night, when the white nights had not yet ended, Sergei got drunk at the club and failed to make it back to his barrack. He knocked on Rultana's door. "Auntie, let me stay the night. It's far to walk." She let him in. In the morning, no one saw him again. Rultana went to work as usual. She cooked soup, this time especially rich, with chunks of meat she had managed to get. The herders praised her. "Rultana, today it's like a restaurant. Where did you get such meat?" She smiled. "It's a secret." And in her cellar, dug into the permafrost beneath the barrack, lay neatly wrapped remains. She knew what to do next. After the freezing rain, winter of 19,771,978, the settlement of Tundra recovered slowly. Reindeer had died by the thousands. The State Farm lost almost half its herd. Meat was delivered from Anadir rarely. Mostly there were canned goods, grain, and dried fish. People ate whatever they could. Ukola, flour mash, sometimes hair if the hunters were lucky. Lines at the canteen were long reindeer herders returning from routes, geological survey workers, mechanics on Gas 71 all-terrain vehicles. Rultina worked from morning until night. She cooked in enormous pots on a wood-fired stove and poured the soup into aluminum bowls. Her face became even more closed off, her eyes empty. Her fellow cooks to Russian women from outside pitied her. "Rula, you should cry sometimes. You're like stone." She shook her head. "Why cry? The dead won't come back." But inside, everything had turned upside down. She remembered how, in spring, whole reindeer carcasses were found intact, but already rotting, meat wasted, and people hungry. It shouldn't be like this, she thought at night in her barrack. Meat is for eating. All meat. The summer of 1978 was short but warm. In August, a new geological team arrived, about a dozen young men from big cities. They lived in separate barracks, drilled 20 kilometers from the settlement, and came back on weekends. Vodka arrived by the crate. They drank in the club to a gramophone playing Vysotsky records. Sergei, the same red-haired geologist from Leningrad, began coming to the canteen often. Tall, loud, with a guitar. "Andy Rule, this place is like the Arctic restaurant," he joked. "When will you serve steaks?" She smiled faintly and slipped him an extra piece of reindeer meat, if there was any. One night at the end of August, during a white night when the sun barely touched the horizon, there was an amateur performance at the club, dancing, songs, vodka flowing freely. Sergei drank hard, celebrating the end of the season. His friends left earlier, but he stayed. He went outside, staggered, and didn't make it the 100 meters to his barrack. He knocked on Rultina's door. Her home was the closest. "Andy Rule, let me stay the night. It's far to go. I'll fall in the tundra." She opened the door and let him in. Gave him tea with dry biscuits. Sergei lay down on the bench by the wall and began snoring almost immediately. Rultina sat at the table, looking at him. Young, strong, plenty of meat on his bones. It shouldn't go to waste, she thought calmly, the way one thinks about a reindeer carcass. She took the axe, a heavy wood-splitting axe that always stood by the stove, and stepped quietly closer. The first blow was to the temple, so he wouldn't scream. Blood splashed onto the rugs. She did not flinch. She worked quickly, the way she had learned to butcher reindeer in her husband's brigade, severing the joints, separating the pieces. She wrapped some in rags and carried them into the cellar beneath the floor. There, in the permafrost, it was colder than any refrigerator. In the morning, Sergei did not show up for breakfast. His companions joked, drank too much again, sleeping somewhere. By lunchtime they grew worried and went looking. They found footprints near Rultina's barrack boots in the mud. They asked her. "He was here," she said calmly. "Stayed the night. Left early in the morning. Said he was heading out on a route." The geologist shrugged. He could have left with an all-terrain vehicle. They filed a formal missing person report, but the local officer merely wrote it down. People disappeared in the tundra all the time. That evening, Rultina cooked soup in the canteen. A huge pot, 50 liters at least. She put bones in for the broth, carrots from the stores, pearl barley, and pieces of meat fresh, without sinew. The smell spread through the building. The herders rushed in. "Rultina, what a miracle. It's been ages since we had soup like this." She poured generously and smiled. "I got good meat. Eat to your health." People ate and praised her. Someone even said, "The taste is unusual, so tender." Rultina nodded. "My secret." That night she chopped the remaining parts finer, burned some in the stove, buried some in the permafrost outside the settlement. She washed the blood away and rinsed the rugs in the river. From that moment on, a strange calm settled inside her. She knew the meat had not been wasted. People were fed, and the tundra was vast. It would hide everything. The year 1979 arrived with strong winds and early frosts. In Tundravy, life went on as usual. Reindeer herders left for the tundra for months, returned exhausted, telling stories of blizzards and wolves. The geologists had left the previous autumn, leaving behind empty barracks and drill pits. Now the settlement was inhabited mostly by locals, Chukchi, and even people from nearby camps, and a few outsiders. A mechanic, an electrician, a teacher at the boarding school. Food shortages did not end. Meat was flown in by helicopter once a quarter, and even that was unreliable. Sometimes the weather interfered. Sometimes plans in Anadir fell apart. In the canteen, Rultina managed as best she could. She cooked stews from Ukola, added canned meat if she managed to barter with pilots for pelts. But people still complained. Rula, when will there be a proper soup? At least a piece of reindeer meat. After the first time with Sergei, Rultina changed. She became calmer, more confident. At night she sometimes woke up and went down to the cellar, checking that everything was in place. The meat lay there frozen solid, like in an icehouse. She took pieces, cut them into portions, and thought, good that it didn't go to waste. People eat and they are full. The second was Victor, the State Farm's mechanic, a man from Magadan, about 45 years old, stocky, with hands permanently smeared with grease from all-terrain vehicles. He lived alone in a barrack, drank often, and cursed his life. Damn Chukotka, he grumbled. They lured me with northern bonuses, and now I'm stuck in this hole. He and Rultina were on good terms. He came to the canteen first, always praised her cooking. Rultina, you're a golden woman. Without you we'd all starve here. In October 1979, when the snow had already fallen, Victor came to the canteen after work. The day was short and dark. He ate, drank tea from a thermos mixed with vodka. Rula, are you closing early today? Maybe you'll sit at your place for a bit? It's cold at home, and I'm too lazy to fire up the stove. Rultina nodded. Come by. I have tea. I'll give you some biscuits. He came in the evening when the settlement was already asleep, sat at the table, took out half a bottle, poured himself a drink and offered her some, but she refused. They talked about life. He complained about his wife who had stayed on the mainland, about the state farm that paid late. Rultina listened in silence, pouring tea into aluminum mugs. When he grew drunk and dozed off, his head dropping onto the table, she stood up. The axe lay under the bench, the same one. The blow was precise, to the back of the head. There was little blood. He didn't even wake up. She worked quickly, as she was used to, cutting, separating meat from bone. The pieces were good, fatty. She carried some into the cellar, chopped some immediately for soup. In the morning, Victor did not show up for work. By lunchtime, the head of the state farm was worried. The vehicle stood idle. They went to Victor's barrack. The door was open, the bed untouched, his things gone. They assumed he had wandered off drunk into the tundra. It happened, or hitched a ride to the district center without asking. They reported it to the local officer, who just shrugged. Look for him yourselves. The tundra's big. That day, the canteen served a special soup. Rultina rose early, set a pot on the stove, added bones for broth, potatoes from storage, onions, and meat fresh, cut into cubes. The smell spread through the settlement. Herders returning from their routes rushed in. Rultina, what's the occasion? It's been ages since we had broth like this. She poured into bowls and smiled. Good meat came in. Eat, boys. Build your strength. People ate with bread, asked for seconds. One young herder said, the taste is strange, more tender than reindeer. Like veal. The others laughed. Don't be picky, just eat. Rultina stood at the serving counter, watching the bowls empty. Inside her it felt warm. It didn't go to waste. Everyone is full. That night she took the remaining body out on sledges beyond the settlement, and buried it in the permafrost under stones. She burned the bones in the stove. The smoke was ordinary, woody. From then on, the soups in the canteen became better. People joked Rultina must know some kind of magic. She only nodded. My secret, Victor's disappearance, was quickly forgotten. In the tundra, such things were normal, and Rultina already knew. This could continue. The meat must not go to waste. The year 1980 in Chukotka was relatively calm. Less snow fell, and the reindeer survived the winter better. But shortages still did not disappear. In Tundravi, construction began on a new boarding school. About 10 workers arrived from central Russia and lived in trailers on the edge of the settlement. They worked from dawn till dusk, hauling bricks and mixing concrete by hand. They went to the canteen in a crowd, ate everything that was served, and always praised Rultina. By then, her soups had become legendary. After Victor, she no longer felt fear. Meat lay stored in the cellar, frozen forever. She took a little at a time, cut it up, cooked, and people were fed. In the settlement they joked, Reltina is our savior. Without her soup we'd all be living on dried fish alone. Even the strict state farm director from Anadyr said at a meeting, comrades, look how Reltina manages. Learn from her. The third was Alexei, a young man of 25 from Voronezh. He had come to the construction site on a komsomol assignment, dreaming of northern bonuses. Tall, thin, fair-haired, always smiling. In the canteen he usually sat alone, reading letters from his mother. He struck up a conversation with Reltina easily. Andy Rule, you're like a real mother here. Your soups are better than homemade cabbage soup. In July 1980, during a spell of heat when mosquitoes swarmed in clouds, Alexei came by in the evening after his shift. The workers were celebrating an advance payment vodka, guitar songs. He had drunk only a little, but his legs wouldn't carry him well. Andy Rule, can I sit at your place? The guys are noisy, and my head hurts. She let him in, as always. Gave him tea with sugar. Sugar was scarce, but she saved some for him. He sat there, talking about home, about a girl who was waiting for him. Reltina listened and nodded. Inside she thought calmly, young, fresh meat. It shouldn't go to waste. When he dozed off at the table, she took the axe. The blow was precise, to the base of the skull. She worked as if on routine, cut him up in the cellar under the light of a battery-powered lamp. The pieces were good, without excess fat. Some went straight into the soup, some into storage. In the morning, Alexei did not show up at the construction site. The foreman grew worried. Where's Lyoshka? He was here yesterday. They checked the trailers. His belongings were gone, the bed cold. They assumed he had snapped and gone to Anadyr without permission. It happened with young men. They reported it by radio, but the police merely noted, missing, likely unauthorized departure. That day, the soup in the canteen was especially thick. Reltina got up at 5 in the morning and put 2 pots on the stove. She added bones, vegetables from the state farm greenhouse, carrots and potatoes, and meat tender, finely cut. The smell was so strong that people came earlier than usual. Reindeer herders, construction workers, even children from the boarding school. Everyone asked for seconds. An old Chukchi man said, Reltina, this meat is like young seal soft. Others agreed, better than reindeer. Where do you get it? She smiled mysteriously. A secret. The main thing is eat, build your strength before winter. People ate, scraped their bowls clean. Someone joked, Rule, you feed us like this, we'll nominate you for Hero of Socialist Labor. She only shook her head. Eat, eat. That night she took the remaining body farther into the tundra on a sledge with her dog, and buried it under a layer of moss in the permafrost. The wind would cover the tracks. She washed the blood carefully and covered the floor with new rugs made from old sacks. Now the soups became her trademark. People came on purpose. Reltina, will there be that soup today? She cooked it more often, taking from her reserves. Everyone in the settlement was satisfied. The shortage seemed to retreat, and Reltina felt needed. I feed the people. The meat does not go to waste. Everything is right. Alexei's disappearance was forgotten within a month. Construction continued, new workers arrived, and the tundra remained silent. As always, the year 1981 brought changes to Tundravi. The construction of the boarding school was finished, the trailers were removed, but new people arrived, a brigade of fur hunters trapping Arctic fox, and several families relocated from other parts of Chukotka. The settlement livened up a little. Films were shown more often at the club using a mobile projector. The radio carried news from Moscow. The Olympics had passed. Now they spoke of a new 5-year plan. But the meat shortage never went away. Helicopters flew less often due to fuel limits, and the reindeer herds had still not fully recovered from the freezing rain disaster. By then, Reltina's soups were no longer just food, they had become a tradition. People came to the canteen not only to eat, but to talk. Rula, when will you make that rich one again? She cooked it 2 or 3 times a week, taking meat from her cellar. Down there it lay in layers, frozen solid, like in an eternal refrigerator. She no longer counted, she just knew it would last a long time. People in the settlement were stronger, healthier. Even the medic at the Feldsher station remarked, "What are you all eating?" There's hardly any vitamin deficiency. But whispers began. The number of disappearances had reached for Sergei, Victor, Alexei, and another visiting worker no one really remembered. Old men in Yaranga said, "Wolves are coming close. They sense people." The young laughed. Drunks wandered into the tundra and froze. But one man noticed something strange. An old herder named Kurjit, a Chukchi from an ancient clan, about 60 years old. He often ate in the canteen, but once said to his neighbors, "This taste it's not reindeer, and not seal. It's strange. Too sweet." Kurjit lived alone in a Yaranga on the edge of the settlement. His wife had died long ago. He helped brigades in the tundra and knew every trail. He and Rultana were distant relatives. Their families had once migrated together. He sometimes visited her, drank tea, talked about old times. In the spring of 1981, in May, when the tundra began to thaw and the rivers broke up, a brigade of reindeer herders asked Kurjit to help drive the herd closer to the settlement. Rultana went to the state farm, sent the cook to feed the people at the camp. She took food, pots and her supplies. At the camp, in a large Yaranga, she cooked soup for the entire brigade, about 15 people. Kurjit ate in silence, watching her closely. After dinner he approached her. "Rultana, where is this meat from?" "That same kind again." She smiled. "Good meat, Kurjit. Eat and don't ask." At night, when everyone was asleep, Kurjit stepped outside the Yaranga to smoke. He saw Rultana come out with an axe and head toward the sledges. He followed quietly, like a hunter. He saw her pull frozen, wrapped pieces from a sack. He didn't understand at once, but his heart tightened. The shape of the pieces was wrong, not like reindeer. On the return trip to the settlement a week later, Kurjit rode with her on the same sledge. He began, "Rultana, I'm old, but my eyes still see. That meat is not animal meat. Tell me the truth." She was silent for a long time, then answered calmly, "It shouldn't go to waste. People are fed and that's good." Kurjit frowned. "This is a great sin. You must tell the state farm." That evening, after they returned to the settlement, Kurjit went to his Yaranga. Rultana knew he would tell. She could not wait. She came to him at night and knocked softly. "Kurjit, shall we have some tea one last time?" He let her in. Family ties still mattered. They sat at the low table. She poured tea from a thermos. He said, "Rultana, stop. This is not our way." When he turned to reach for his pipe, she took the axe hidden under her sheepskin coat. The blow was strong, to the back. Kurjit gasped but did not cry out. He had no strength. She worked quickly, right there in the Yaranga. Pieces into a sack, some set aside for soup in the morning. But she made a mistake. In her haste, she left his militsa, an old reindeer skin coat with personal belongings inside. A knife in the pocket and a bone amulet. She did not wrap everything. Some clothing she shoved under the sledges, planning to burn it later. In the morning, Kurjit was not found. The brigade assumed he had gone into the tundra alone. It happened with old men. But the whispers grew louder. 5 gone now. That's not normal. Rultana cooked soup in the canteen from fresh meat. People ate and praised it. But one young herder said, "Yesterday Kurjit was saying strange things about the meat." Others waved it off. The old man's lost his mind. And in Rultana's cellar, the reserves grew even larger. She thought, now it's calm. No one will find out. But the tundra had begun to thaw, and so had its secrets. In June 1981, a helicopter arrived in Tundravi unexpectedly. It brought mail, 2 crates of canned food and a young police lieutenant from Anadyr, Smirnov. He was sent after a complaint from relatives of Kurjit, who had not returned to his winter camp and had stopped answering radio calls. Smirnov was 27, fresh from the academy, with a notebook always in his pocket. He had never been this far north before and looked at the tundra with a mixture of curiosity and unease. At the state farm office he was briefed quickly. "Disappearances," he repeated. "How many?" 5 over the last few years, the director said reluctantly. "But people disappear here all the time. Drunks, hunters, the tundra swallows them." Smirnov frowned. 5 from one settlement is a pattern. He began with interviews. People spoke willingly. There was little entertainment in Tundravi, and a real investigation felt like an event. They ate at the canteen all the time. Rultina feeds us better than anyone. Good woman. Quiet. Smirnov wrote it all down. At the Feldsher station, the medic mentioned casually, people here have been healthier lately. Less exhaustion. Better blood tests. Smirnov paused. What changed? The medic shrugged. Food, I guess. The soups. Smirnov visited the canteen in the evening. Rultina recognized him immediately. Outsiders stood out. She served him soup, watched him taste it. He ate slowly, thoughtfully. It's good, he said. Very good. What kind of meat? She answered calmly, whatever we can get. He nodded but wrote something in his notebook. The next day he inspected the settlement. At the edge, near Kirgits-Uranga, he found traces old, half-washed by meltwater. Scraps of fabric under the sledges, a knife with a bone handle, hidden in the snow. The Feldsher confirmed. That was Kirgits. Smirnov felt a chill. He asked to see Rultina's cellar. She did not refuse. This is where I store food. The cellar was deep, dug into permafrost. Cold, clean. Shelves with frozen meat wrapped in cloth. Smirnov looked closely. These are not standard cuts, he said quietly. She met his gaze. Meat is meat. That night Smirnov could not sleep. The pieces didn't match any animal he knew. The disappearances. The soups. The cellar. In the morning he returned with the director and the local officer. They removed the wrappings. Hands. A shoulder blade. A human femur. Silence fell. Rultina did not scream. She sat on a bench, hands folded. I didn't waste it, she said quietly. People were hungry. Smirnov swallowed. You killed them. She nodded. They came themselves. And I fed the people. She was arrested without resistance. The helicopter took her away the next day. The canteen closed. For a long time afterward, people in Tundravy could not bring themselves to eat soup. And in the tundra, the wind carried the smell of thawing earth, as if reminding everyone, nothing stays buried forever. The trial took place in Anadyr in the winter of 1982. It was closed. No journalists, no outsiders. Only the judge, the prosecutor, a court-appointed lawyer, and several witnesses flown in from Tundravy. For many of them, it was the first time they had ever left the tundra. Rultina stood quietly in the dock. She wore a simple padded jacket, her hair already streaked with gray. She did not deny anything. Yes, she said evenly. I killed them. Why? The prosecutor asked again and again. She answered the same way every time. There was hunger. Meat must not go to waste. The psychiatrist concluded. Mentally sane, not psychotic. Displays rigid moral reasoning shaped by extreme survival conditions. The court did not know what to do with that. Witnesses testified. The State Farm director spoke about shortages, about helicopters that didn't come, about plans from Moscow that did not match reality. The medic spoke about improved health indicators. Several herders spoke hesitantly, eyes downcast. We ate and didn't ask. Kirgits' relatives did not come. In the tundra, grief is silent. The sentence was harsh. Death penalty was still formally in place, but it was not applied. Rultina was given life imprisonment in a special regime colony. When the verdict was read, she only nodded. People were fed, she said quietly. That's what matters. Tundravy changed. The canteen reopened with a new cook, but people complained. The soup is thin. It doesn't warm you the same way. Meat deliveries improved over time. The boarding school filled with children. Helicopters came more often, but the legend remained. Old people told it in low voices. Once there was a woman who fed the whole settlement through the hungry years. They did not always say how. Children whispered scary versions. Adults fell silent. Years later, a young ethnographer would write in his notebook, in extreme conditions, moral boundaries shift. What is monstrous in the city can be perceived as duty in the tundra. Rultina became not a monster, but a mirror reflecting hunger, isolation, and abandonment. The notebook was archived. The settlement still stands. The tundra is quiet, and when the wind howls at night, some say it carries the smell of rich broth, and a reminder. Survival has a price. Years passed. By the late 1990s, Tundravy was no longer what it had been. The state farm collapsed, the boarding school closed, helicopters came only on special requests. Half the houses stood empty, roofs sagged under snow. Young people left for Anadyr or the mainland. Only the old ones remained, those whose lives were already woven into the tundra. Rultana's name was no longer spoken aloud, but it was remembered. Sometimes a newcomer would ask, usually a geologist or a seasonal hunter, "Why do people here treat food so seriously? Why do they never throw anything away?" The elders would shrug. Hunger remembers. If pressed, someone might add quietly, "There was a woman once. She fed everyone." No details. No explanations. In winter, when storms cut the settlement off for weeks and supplies ran low, people cooked thin soups and sat in silence, listening to the wind scrape the walls. And someone would always say, "Still not like hers." No one ever replied. In the colony, far to the south, Rultana aged quickly. She worked in the kitchen. The administration allowed it. She caused no trouble, spoke little, followed rules precisely. Other inmates avoided her at first, then simply accepted her presence. She cooked soup. It was always thick. When asked how she made it taste so rich, she answered the same way she always had. "You must not waste what you are given." At night, she dreamed of the tundra, not of blood, not of faces, but of steam rising from bowls, of people eating in silence, of warmth spreading through frozen bodies. She never asked for pardon. She never wrote letters. After her death, the prison records noted briefly, "Deceased. Cause. Natural." No obituary. No grave visitors. Only a number crossed out. But in Tundravi, long after, children invented a game. When the soup at home was especially good, they whispered, "This is Rultana's soup." Adults scolded them, "Don't say that." Yet they ate every last drop. And the tundra remained what it always was: vast, indifferent, patient. It keeps bones. It keeps secrets. It waits. After the events, Tundravi became almost a ghost settlement. People who remained spoke less, moved carefully, and taught the children to respect the tundra above all else. They never wasted food. Nothing. Even scraps were boiled into broth or dried for later. The legend of Rultana became a cautionary tale. Parents whispered it to children, "Eat everything on your plate. Waste nothing. The tundra is watching." No one spoke of the murders openly. The wind carried the story, reshaped it, until it became a part of local oral tradition. A tale not of crime, but of survival. Occasionally, researchers visited, anthropologists, ethnographers, journalists. They asked questions about the disappearances, about the so-called miraculous soups. The old residents would answer vaguely, "She fed the people." No further details. Rultana herself, far away in prison, never expressed remorse. She considered herself a caretaker of the settlement, a provider. To her, what she did was not cruelty, it was logic shaped by hunger and isolation. Outside, the tundra remained indifferent. Wolves roamed. Blizzards covered the land. Snow drifted over the old trails, hiding the past. But in the stories, Rultana lived on, sometimes feared, sometimes revered, always remembered. In modern times, when helicopters occasionally land in Tundravi and workers ask about food, the answer remains the same. Respect the meat. Respect what you are given. The settlement learned that the memory of Rultana was more powerful than the state farm, the school, or any law. Survival, she had shown them, comes at a price. And the tundra, patient as always, watches. By the mid-1980s, Tundravi had mostly returned to silence. The new generation of herders grew up hearing only whispers of Rultana. She was no longer a person in daily life, but a figure in the collective memory, a symbol of extreme survival, of moral compromise, and of the harshness of the tundra. The canteen reopened under ordinary cooks. Food arrived by helicopter occasionally. People were fed adequately, but they often said quietly, "It's not like hers." Even the adults, hardened by years of living in isolation, felt that something essential had been lost. In the prison colony, Rultana lived out her days quietly. She worked in the kitchen, respected by staff for her efficiency. She never complained. She never explained beyond her simple principle: do not let good food go to waste. She died in obscurity. No ceremony. No newspaper. Only the records. Deceased. Cause. Natural. Back in Tundravi, the tundra continued. Winters came and went. Snow buried old tracks. Wolves hunted, rivers froze, and the wind carried secrets over the endless land. Children played games of Rultana's soup, keeping her story alive in hushed tones. Adults reminded them, respect food, respect the land. The settlement adapted. Life returned to the rhythm of the seasons, and the tundra remained vast, silent, eternal. Rultana's legend endured, a reminder that survival is not always gentle, that morality can bend under hunger, and that the tundra, indifferent and patient, keeps its own memory of everything buried within it. In the end, the story was no longer just about fear or crime, it was about the harshness of life, the necessity of resourcefulness, and the fragile line between necessity and atrocity. And the tundra waited,